I'm going to come to every event. My ego is now, I'm set for a week. You got me. Every week I need something like this.
Wonderful. So I want to start, maybe we can start with the short version of the story of Waze. I will start just the important parts.
Wow, the important parts. So Waze was founded by Ehud Shabtai, who his girlfriend gave him an iPac in 2006. Many of you don't know what an iPac was, but imagine an iPhone with no connectivity. And it had some navigation software on it. And he started driving around. He was an engineer. He'd always get lost thinking about things. And he was blown away by the concept that you could see where you're going. And he began playing around, found some APIs, built an app that you could, today we call it an app that you could actually mark speed cameras, and released it to a forum of iPac users. And within a few days, they mapped out all the speed cameras in Israel. And it was very primitive. They would connect to their computers and send it to him, and he would merge it. This whole thing went on. And then he got a cease and desist letter from the Israeli map monopoly, Mapa. And there was a meeting that today is obviously the famous meeting at the time. No one knew it would be a famous meeting, where basically they said, look, if you charge for your product, we'll take a slice of the action. If you're going to give it away for free, you're infringing on our intellectual property, we'll shut you down. And he was a big open source guy, and he got offended. And you should be very careful who you offend. And he basically said, screw you, deleted the map, and used this initial community to begin mapping out the roads of Israel, sampling the GPS chips, getting the data from them, etc. And slowly they began building up what today is Waze. And so it literally began on the balcony, which is the Israeli version of a garage in Tel Aviv, by someone who got pissed off by the incumbent. And this, I think, is a very important message. Like, our business is disruption, right? That's what technology is about. We usually think about disruption from the small startup that's going out there and changing the world. I think it's very important to think about it from the side of the incumbent, who is so sure of himself. And I'll say that in the context which, so my role is to be controversial wherever I go, so I'll be controversial. I think this is exactly the state that Israel's in. Israel's the incumbent. And when they asked Hemingway how he went bankrupt, he said, well, in two stages, very slowly and then all of a sudden. And that's how disruption happens, right? Nokia didn't think the iPhone was anything. They made fun of it for several years, explaining why it was wrong, until poof, overnight they were gone. This is what's been happening in Israel for the last few decades. We are in a race to the bottom of the OECD in terms of our education level, in terms of our healthcare, in terms of the productivity of the workforce outside of high tech. Like, we forget, today we sent a spaceship to the moon. It is there, and in pieces, but it's there. That's more than most countries can say. It's amazing when you think about it, and it's like a non-profit volunteer thing, while at the same time, our hospitals are falling apart. And as an employer of engineers, I've had to open an offshore site in the Ukraine and in New York because I can't hire enough engineers in Israel. This engine of high tech that's pulling us forward, at the end of the day, is something like 70,000 people that matter. 70,000 people that when they get tired of their kids going to shitty schools and they leave, it's over. We become Argentina. The only thing that can save us, the only startup that can save this disruption is the Haredi community. 25% of the kids here have brain power like we can't imagine. Their cousins in Belgium and in New York are going to the best schools and are doctors and lawyers and engineers, and they're not. And they are our future. And as someone who used to fight them in the streets of Jerusalem and have a lot of issues with them, this is the only way Israel can move forward, and it has to come from the bottom. It's not going to come from politicians or anyone on top. It's going to come from the Haredi community deciding that they're tired of being poor and they want to join the 21st century, and whatever way they do it. Right? And I think this is one of the great things to me about Kamatech, that it's not some secular people coming telling the Haredi, this is how you do it. It's you're doing it your way, whatever way it is, right? It's about these individual people, and the one thing us Jews have is, some brain power. We're stuck in the middle of the desert with nothing else. Like, if we can unlock that, that to me is the only future we have in Israel. So that's why I'm here.
Okay.
that's how Waze started. Okay, let's get back to that.
Let's ask something about the Israeli culture. What do you think about the Israeli culture that make Israelis try to reach the moon, or fail in the way, I don't know, or try to really to become the startup nation? And what is in the Israeli culture inside Waze? You know, when Waze become now part of Google, it's a huge company. What do you see is the essence of the Israeli culture?
So the Israeli culture is what allowed a very small team of people based in Israel to take on the largest map companies in the world and in many ways win. It is also what almost shut us down. We have a big gap in scaling. We don't understand it. You talk to an American entrepreneur, talk to a Chinese entrepreneur. That's the best. You talk to a Chinese entrepreneur, out of school, young, 22-year-old person, the smallest unit of measurement they can imagine is 100 million. And it doesn't matter what you're measuring. People, servers, dollars, whatever it is, 100 million is the smallest number. You talk to an Israeli coming out of school, to go to Jerusalem, it's 45 minutes, it's a long way. Oh, it's like they think in millions and thousands in small numbers. That jump is our biggest challenge. And the number that you showed here of the 1,300 startups, I would rather see something else. I'd rather see all those people in Google and Facebook and Amazon in Israel, dealing with the cultural challenges, but learning how the big world works. A lot of things that we take for granted in Israel because we're smarter than everyone, right? We know better than everyone and everything. We're just not talking on the same level of how decisions are made in large companies because we've never worked in a large company. We don't understand what anything large can be. And this to me is the biggest challenge, right? How do we get Israel, and Israelis in general, everyone loves this idea of a startup. Obviously, it's the most irrational thing to do. Before you go to a startup, work for a while in a large company, see large or large startup, whatever, see the world from where they sit. When you sit in a Google office and you look at the world, you're looking at a very different world than where you're sitting in Israel in your startup. And I'm not saying that's the right way to look at the world or anything like that, but I'm saying you have to understand that side of the world. And we see today, we have a program to bring back Israelis from the US to Israel, and from New York and California, and we're headhunting them because they've seen the light. They've seen the world from that perspective. And so when they come back to Israel, they're a completely different animal than the engineer coming out of 8200. Right? They've seen things differently, and so they can think in different terms. And so I think this is our biggest challenge when we think about tech in Israel in general. It's how do we get enough people that have worked in enough environments that we can use them to build very large companies. And there's no reason it shouldn't happen in Israel, except that we've got too many Jews. Everybody wants to be a boss. Nobody wants to work. So except for that, we're good.
Okay, let's speak a little bit about Waze and what do you see the future? We just saw Prime Minister Netanyahu on the screen when the spaceship crashed. And he's saying that...
With the elections? Oh, you're talking about oh, sorry. I thought that spaceship.
That Israel become a car industry empire. There are over 500 car auto tech companies in Israel, like Mobileye and others. What do you think is the future of mobility, autonomous cars, or all these phenomena?
I think all of us Israelis should take a big dose of humbleness. Okay? We all are full of ourselves. We think we're the center of everything. We're probably the only ones who think that way. Okay? If you look at the number of engineers working on car technologies in Silicon Valley, we're a rounding error. If you look at the number of self-driving cars that are actually driving on the roads, right? Israel could lead the world in transportation. We're a tiny country, right? We have terrible traffic. We can move, theoretically, regulation much easier. The US, you've got states and federal and this and that, the other. We could lead this. But it does require government vision. And we definitely lack a lot of that, right? But Israel could be leading this. We say we're the center of all this kind of stuff. I have to admit that I think we're kind of misleading ourselves. Yes, we have a few companies that have done really well in the space. Tesla is not in Israel. Google's Waymo is not in Israel. Uber and Lyft self-driving cars are not in Israel. Ford self-driving cars are not in Israel. Yes, Daimler has an innovation center in Israel. Everybody likes to have an innovation center in Israel you can come and show off. But that's not what moves the needle. What moves the needle is real engineering with hundreds and thousands of engineers building the actual engine. So if we think about it from Waze, right, we talk about consumer. We went all the way to a consumer brand. It was not easy. It's difficult. We're very, very lucky. But at the same time, that's what we need in Israel also. Not companies building sensors that the Chinese will anyway make much cheaper than us. Not companies trying to build some kind of, all the way, build a self-driving car. We tried several times and failed, but that's fine. That's part of learning, right? That doesn't mean we should give up on trying to actually build the real thing. Especially when it comes to transportation, we need government involvement. It's great whatever Bibi said. Our laws are archaic. They're driven by the taxi monopoly and union in Israel. The fact that you don't have an Uber X in Israel. The fact that you don't have a law that even allows testing of self-driving cars. I mean, there's so many things we could do if we decided as a country. A bunch of Israelis with no funding put a spacecraft on the moon. Yeah, it crashed, but it got to the moon, right? Like, who could think about that? But we can't, deal with regulation around self-driving cars. I mean, come on.
So what is the future of self-driving cars, not in Israel, in general? What do you see the future of transportation? Give us some examples of products you are working on, like carpool and others. So,
traffic is a horrible problem. It's my business, so in that sense, for me, it's good. But for most people, it's terrible. The length of your commute, the amount of time you spend in traffic correlates directly with your health, with your emotional health. The economic waste is off the charts. The environmental impact, we all agree. Trends in the world are urbanization, right? We're getting to larger and larger centers, these mega cities. And there is no way the infrastructure is going to support this. And we all like to blame someone, right? It's not us, of course. It's someone else. So we're kind of hoping that the government will come and do this kind of magical thing and save us, right? Or this new technology is going to come. We're going to go underground. We're going to fly over the air. These self-driving cars are going to do it. None of this really is going to solve the fundamental problem that we are the problem. When you sit in traffic and you look at all the people around you and you're cursing them because they're idiots, right? It's their fault that you're not getting to work on time. And they're looking at you and they're saying exactly the same thing, right? We are all the problem. We have chosen to build our cities this way. We've chosen to build our roads this way. We've chosen to drive at the same time alone in our cars. And so we all have to take responsibility for traffic. There isn't going to be a simple solution. No one's going to fly in and save us with some kind of magical solution. We have to get more people into fewer cars. That's the only thing. Now, it doesn't matter if I'm driving myself, or if an Uber driver is driving me, or if a robot is driving the car. If I sit alone in the car, there just isn't enough road. There's not enough road for this. And this is really the change that we're trying to drive in terms of carpooling. We have to change our behavior. We cannot continue to drive by ourselves and expect somehow it's all going to work out. It's continuously getting worse. You all feel it in your gut, right? Every day when you drive to work. I can tell you mathematically it's getting worse and has been getting worse. By the way, the only thing that'll help is an economic depression, but that'll also just give us a little bit of wiggle room. There's no end to that. So Waze is focused on, we've got 116 million actives a month. If a fraction of our users will take one or two riders with them, we can make a measurable impact on traffic today. Not some imaginary future where we're flying in the air and there's peace in the world and everything. Today we can do that. And this does require us to change our behaviors. Now, this is sort of the mission that Waze has gone on. Our original mission of outsmarting traffic, we got too big. There's just no options. We can't do much. We've expanded our mission to eliminating traffic. And we're taking the problem head on. And this really is, as I said, our carpooling product. It's actually launched in the US. Our platform connects between drivers and riders. The rider pays something to help cover the cost. So the driver gets something for their fuel. This is not a job. This is not an Uber. If you're driving anyway, and you're anyway spending the money you're driving, take someone with you. If you're going to drive for us, you'll lose money. That's not. You go be an Uber driver. So this is kind of the next evolution of Waze.
Okay. Today you are part of Google. Is Waze a separate part or part of the... There is a difference between Google Maps and Waze, how it works?
So we are very, very, very independent. I have a Waze email address. I also have a Google email address. I have a Waze email address. We're kept separately. We have our own infrastructure. We run in the cloud. We don't run in Google's infrastructure. We have different terms and conditions. We're given the flexibility to really push the envelope in a lot of things that we do. Google Maps and Waze have a tense relationship. Let's be polite about it. Because when you drive, you're going to use one app. It's going to be either us or them. Any other time, use Google Maps. If you're walking, if you're bicycle riding, if you're flying on eagles, whatever it is, they're a great app for that. When it comes to driving, use Waze. we're going deeper and deeper and deeper in driving. So I'll give you an example. In the US, we can tell you whether you should take the HOV lane and how much it's going to save you. We can tell you in Sao Paulo what day of the week you're allowed to drive and not allowed to drive, or in Jakarta. We'll tell you in the UK where the zone is and the congestion pricing starts, or soon to be in New York, the congestion pricing. We'll tell you about it. We're getting that data based on our community of people that are local, but that's our use case. Deeper and deeper and deeper into driving versus wider into every possible use case.
Okay. Remember you told me a story once about when you were in the middle of the journey of Waze, and then Apple went out with maps or something like this.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, but in general, the idea of a small startup building a product, and every entrepreneur feels the same. Maybe Google will come out with a product like this, Amazon, Apple. Now you are inside, Google.
So this is usually called, in the professional kind of venture world, it's called the oh shit moment. And it usually happens right after you invest in a company in the first board meeting, right? You invest in a company, you see this beautiful picture, you walk into the board meeting, oh, we forgot to tell you that it's all wrong, right? That's usually that moment. Our oh shit moment was when Google came out with the Google Navigator, it was called then. We had no idea it was coming. By the way, we had a term sheet from an investor, big shot American investor, who had checked with all their big shot Google friends, and nobody knew it was coming. It was probably one of the best kept secrets in the Valley. Usually people know all this stuff. It was a shock, because that was our model. We were going to disrupt maps. And they had a better product, and it was just as free as ours. So that was the big sort of moment for us of panic. Luckily, we didn't obviously give up, or we didn't have any choice but to give up and continue. And obviously, if I tell the story now, I tell it as it was strategic vision, and we knew what we were doing, and we were very confident, of course, and we knew we were scared shitless, and we really all the stories you hear about what happens in the boards and whatever, it's all true. But one of the reasons I recommend the Charedim to go work in large companies, once you see the constraint a large company has, you will view the competition differently. Now, I had never worked in a large company, so I was obviously not sleeping at night ever. Looking back, I shouldn't have even worried about it. Right? When you think about a large company, Google has 100,000 people. We weren't competing with well, then it was a different story, and obviously let's not talk about Google. But let's say, I don't know, Facebook has 30,000 people, something like that. You're not competing with 30,000 people. You're competing with a team that's working on your existing product. And that team might have less engineers than you do. And that team has 6-month maternity leave. Where's my career development going? I want to get promoted. I didn't get it. I'm going to move to another team. They've got all kinds of constraints that you can't imagine as a startup. You are singularly focused on one thing. And so this idea that you're competing with Facebook is wrong. You're competing with this tiny team, which could be a fraction, it could be a rounding error, and could be shut down for reasons that have to do with different SVPs fighting with each other. So when you really know what you're doing and why, and if you're focused on your user, and your user loves your product, nothing can stop you. And at the same time, if your user does not like your product, and you're not focused on that user, nothing can save you. So you don't have really competition. People like to say, oh, I'm competing with Facebook. You're not. Facebook doesn't know who you are. Your only competition is yourself. Your ability to actually execute and get something done and hire the people, et cetera. By the time you reach a point where Facebook will view you as a competitor, you'll probably be bought by Google before that. So don't worry about that. Worry about your ability to execute and stay focused on the user. That's the only thing that really matters. In a consumer company, obviously it's different in a business company. That focus, that maniacal focus on the user is really what wins.
You say we need to put Haredim in the big companies. We are doing it. We placed over 1,000 Haredim in the big companies. But what I see is that the big companies, as far as they are innovative, they innovate products and technology, they are not so innovative when it comes to HR. They try to hire the same people, the same university graduates. And
if you think you're going to build a startup and compete with the world, and it's going to be easy, right, then you're off. So yes, it's going to be hard. The HR are going to be biased against you, and the team's not going to like you because you don't work on the Saturday, whatever. Believe me, it's not going to be easy, but it'll be much easier than your startup. So yes, life is not easy, but what you will learn in these companies, and on top of that, the lack of view of the world that you will have in your startup is what's going to hold you back much more than that HR person. It's It's not easy, but if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Noam. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, and good luck. Excited to see the demos.
Okay, thank you so much.